I see that in this you did leapfrog the immigration problem ahead and pointed out that it's possible that Western United States is going to be largely populated by Oriental, and that the rest, what'd you say, through Texas or something, may become almost completely Hispanic.
Well, the geographers are already predicting that. You know, it'll come 20, 50, 100, who knows how many years, because, you know, borders change. Look what's happened to Europe, of course. And we don't think of that happening here, but it is, because throughout history, immigration has changed countries, nations, cultures, you know, anywhere you go, whether they were barbarians or the Goths or the Visigoths or the Romans or whoever. So they're figuring that one day from Fairbanks, or not Fairbanks, Anchorage all the way down to, say, San Francisco will be a Pacific Rim country. And then from, say, Southern California across Arizona and New Mexico and half of Texas will be a kind of a Hispanic mixture, like they call it Anglia or something like that. So it will change eventually. You know, maybe we won't live to see it, but nothing's forever.
Well, I thought about it in terms of economic or political. I mean, all that bit going on in Canada about separatists. I remember reading some speculation that if, in fact, Quebec split off, that Western Canada, particularly British Columbia, might find it made more sense to try to ally with the United States and be a corridor to Alaska.
I did all that in a book called Night Probe. I had Quebec go independent. And the first thing that even, God, when I write that way back in what, 79, 80? Yeah. When Quebec in the book went independent, the maritime states, because they were cut off, Nova Scotia, Newfoundland, were the first ones then to apply for statehood. And then some of the other, particularly Saskatchewan, came in, because it's Saskatchewan, North Dakota, Minnesota are almost like one anyway. People go back and forth, friends, relatives, the whole bit. So I remember I had that even in the book then. So it'd be interesting to see if and when Quebec does go independent, how that all works out.
Well, it's been easy enough to think about economic and political realignments, but I must say that until I read this line in Flood Tide, I hadn't really thought about you know, the immigration patterns dictating perhaps new political shapes. But of course it makes perfectly good sense. One thing, I remember when I read Inca Gold, I liked it because I've been to Peru before the Shining Path really kind of blocked us off. It was in the early 70s with the Virginia Bar Association. Is it the case for you as an author that you might want to write a book about someplace like Peru, but you can't get there because of some political situation? No,
actually,
well, you go to libraries.
Yeah, I don't have to go. For example, I met the, I was in this underwater habitat with Senator and then later Governor Lowell Weicker. We spent, I guess, 5 days down in this tank, you know, 60 feet under the water there in St. Croix. And he had, at this little university there, he had some of the oceanographers come in from Cuba. And of course, they came in with their communist, you know, overseers, and I got kind of chummy because he was feeding me Cuban cigars. The fellow was the you know, kind of, I guess you'd call it the assistant and minister of whatever he was, and he was based in Washington, and they were staying, I think, at the Czech embassy at the time. And because being a writer, like a journalist, you could go to Cuba. And he said, oh, and he says, you know, your country will let you come in, but, you know, from our end, he said, I'll fix it up so you can see this and you can do that and have all this. But I just never did. I used the country as a background for a book, but it was a case of taking the time to go. You know, it would have taken, you know, probably 2-3 weeks, just preparation time there and everything else that I would have lost out of the book. So. And I'm not very bright, because a lot of times I'll go to a place I write about after the book comes out, so I can't deduct it off my income taxes research. So I do that a lot of times. I think Barbara and I went on a cruise down around the tip of South America that I used in a book, and we were laughing because after I wrote about it, I thought, gee, it'd be fun to go there.
Instead of the other way around.
Yeah, right.
Well, writers all work differently. You know, some have to go and actually walk the territory. I had thought about Peru because I had asked a writer whom I like he would like to, you know, why he hadn't set a book there, because it would have been a natural for the series he was doing. And he's the one that said to me, well, you know, it's not a great place to go do research right now because it's dangerous. But speaking of writing, we're actually filming this interview here in your workroom, where we have models to look at and all kinds of wonderful stuff. Is this a room you built specifically for this? Not a room, but a whole building, sorry.
Yes, I built just as an office.
What must be a wonderful place to come out and just kind of lock yourself away.
Oh yeah, it's that's the fun part. You know, as I say, lock myself away. Because the other house in Telluride, I have a loft there, and of course my wife yells up to me all the time. But that's one thing. You know, when you're a writer, you and your wife have to be pretty close because you're together 24 hours a day. So, but we're like a pair of old shoes, so it works out pretty well. But there are times, you know, she'll unknowingly bug me when I'm in the middle of something, but which makes her mad because I can be writing away and the phone rings. I can take the conversation, put the phone back, and go right back to where I was. I've been very fortunate. I've never had writer's block. When I sit down, I always seem to know where I'm going.
Well, that was our show. Few of you may have realized that Clive came from a background in professional advertising. I never think of Ajax without thinking of that little thing, foams the dirt right down the drain, which was his deal. But it's one reason I think that the books have been so successful is he's always been able to pay attention to the marketing. And part of that has been this marvelous car collection. He started, I think, just out of interest in buying old cars with some of the profits from the books, but it turned out to be a pretty shrewd investment, as those of us who follow the Barrett-Jackson car auctions will know. And over the course of the years, Clive was instrumental in getting photos of himself, but even more fun, photos of the cars on the back of the books. And that's another thing that Dirk will be continuing in this kind of family brand, is bringing the cars forward. They are stored up in Colorado, where the climate is kinder, and I believe that there is now access to them. Eventually they may form some kind of car museum. But one thing we hope to show you is kind of a parade of the cars over the years, as well as you will see, a parade of photos of the author over the years, all of us growing a little bit older, but more like wine, I hope, than cheese. In any case, it's been a wonderful association. In the time that I've been doing this show, and I've owned the Poison Pen, Phoenix has developed an ever-broadening and more impressive community of authors in a wide range of genres. We have great science fiction writers, romance writers, historians, humorists. For any of you who remember the late Irma Bombeck, and certainly the cartoons of Bill Keane. And while Clive is probably the best, maybe biggest bestseller of the lot, I think it's just so exciting to see how the Valley has grown, our community has grown, and so it's nice to go back and touch base a few years ago with one of our local giants. Thank you so much for joining us, and a Happy New Year to you all.